Good morning. All right, let's wake up, right? So I'm thrilled to be here in Cape Town. It's my first time in Africa. In fact, I have to tell you, my daughter was here when she was 17 years old, so long before I was, working with students. When she was in high school, helping teach students about the SAT and some of the college work. And I was always envious as she talked about her experiences working in Africa. So I'm thrilled to be here. I hope to have some time to see a little bit of Cape Town, but of course, I'm like your schedule where I'm flying out way too soon. So I think I loved your opening, Happy, because I mean, my talk is directly in line with what your whole theme of this conference is about. And so I was vice chair for SC18, which I don't know how many of you attended. I think it was one of our best conferences. I know Happy was there. I hope others. What did people think for SC18 that were there? All right, yeah. It just continues to grow in the demand and the interest, and I think that is a fundamental thing that we as a community need to understand. I was thinking about the history because it was 30 years of SC. The first supercomputer, you may say, was the ENIAC, back in the 1940s. And really supercomputers, in fact, the term supercomputer was named for the super, which was a nickname or unclassified term for the hydrogen bomb. So the supercomputers were used for national security. They were procured by the government, basically, and they were expensive. They were research projects, really hard to maintain, and took special skills, right? In fact, there was no operating system, standard operating systems. So you fast forward to today, and I think it's exciting because universities now have supercomputers, and it's more widely used. Universities are teaching parallel programming, which is great because we now are getting the talent we need to run them. But let's be honest, they're still expensive. They still begin hard to maintain, and frankly, they're also needing special skill set to optimize the code for the new technologies and the new architectures that are coming down the pipeline. I've been involved with HPC for a number of years, all part of working through Lawrence Livermore and also Sandia National Lab, so working very closely with the U.S. Department of Energy and their ASC program. And I've seen this big push for more and more petaflops. And right now, we're working towards exascale computing. And Intel's fortunate enough to be a partner with the Department of Energy, pushing for more and more compute. But the thing I find that's different now is that no longer are we alone in the push for performance. High-performance computing, I will assert, so the skills that we use today and that we know will be foundational to all computing. I talked to my peer who runs the IT side of Intel and the enterprise, and they are now talking about the need for high performance and the need for low latency. So those skills and that infrastructure that we have pushed for the last 50 years is going to be the foundation for all computing. So students going into this, you have great careers, and all of us are going to be fundamental for making this shift. So why do I believe that, right? Obviously, compute is everywhere. We all know this. I don't remember when I got my first mobile device, my cell phone. I think babies are now born with cell phones. I mean, most, right? Seriously. I mean, I can remember my children, wanting one by middle school. I don't know. Do they get them in kindergarten now? I don't know, right? When do you give your child a mobile device? And I swear that's the only way kids communicate. Unfortunately, good or bad, right? But I use my mobile device to turn on my lights, to see who's at the front door, right? I mean, that mobile device is our connection to that Internet of Things. The whole universe is becoming connected with these intelligent devices. And when you talk about 5G coming down the pipeline, we're really talking about even an increase in the speed and the performance of these mobile devices in the Internet of Things. So truly, compute is from the edge all the way through to the data center. So that's one of the changes that's happening, but with that is the huge amount of data that's happening, right? The data, we've talked about this for years. We kept talking about finding the needle in the haystack. I've been part of research projects for 20 years on this. The data is going to continue to grow. It's going to grow 10 times over the next 10 years. And yet, in the last 2 years, the amount of data that we produced is more than the history of all data. So in 2 years, we've done more than we've ever had, and now it's going to grow another 10 times. This is good and bad, right? The challenge is, today, most companies only take advantage of 1% of the data that they collect. So as we continue to see this growth in data, how are we going to take advantage of it, the true opportunity? I mean, some of the challenges are the silos of compute infrastructure, and we'll talk about how that needs to change, but also just privacy concerns, cost of storage. I mean, there's a number of fundamental factors that we need to work from for moving this siloed infrastructure to actually accessible infrastructure, because the potential is amazing with the business insights and scientific discovery. So I see that this exponential data growth is one of the fundamental drivers that why we can get into some of the 2 trends I wanted to explore today. And I mean, you already set this up beautifully, thank you, about the cloud growth and what's happening in the cloud and what we foresee happening in the cloud, but also this whole idea of new workloads and new workflows with the introduction of AI and high-performance data analytics. So let's talk a little bit about the cloud. So the surveys we've done and are part of, we see that the private cloud is becoming increasingly important, with about 70% of the sites running greater than 10% of their workloads in the private cloud, and 26% saying their most important workloads are run in the private cloud. I am honestly a little confused when we talk about private cloud, because I will assert that any HPC center that has multiple tenancy is running a private cloud. I mean, we may not have the cloud infrastructure, but the basic fundamentals of what we call a private cloud, I would assert we're doing them today, okay? So really the big question is, who's moving to the public cloud? About 80% of HPC centers are running some workloads in the public cloud, the embarrassingly parallel workloads, we call them. That's up from 13% 5 years ago. So we've seen a growth of people trying out the public cloud. We've also seen the top-tier CSPs putting in HPC-friendly infrastructure in the public cloud, whether or not they're partnering with one of our OEMs, an HPC-centric OEM, to actually allow that in the cloud, or even you'll see most of the OEMs are putting up and partnering with either second-tier or third-tier CSP providers to offer this service. But I'm having ongoing dialogues with the top-tier CSPs asking what do they need to do to start attracting HPC workloads. I'm going to step back a second. So what's an HPC workload? Right? Traditionally, we've always said HPC is modeling and simulation, but that definition is changing, and so is the definition that the CSPs are providing. Again, we're going to go back to this fundamental, that high-performance computing The high-performance computing workloads also include AI and high-performance data analytics. Okay, and that's why the cloud service providers are interested. I think this is a good thing because one of the reasons I came to Intel about 2 years ago was I wanted to spread the power of high-performance computing to more people. And truly, the public cloud and hybrid cloud can allow that to happen with the democratization. It will allow small and medium businesses to have access to these resources to actually look at speeding up their prototyping and the economic advantages of using high-performance computing. Where we shift from private to hybrid to public, I think is really yet to be seen. But the fact that the CSPs are now very interested in setting up instances is a sign that we're going to have more and more ability for the small and medium businesses, if nothing else. And also, the number one reason why the high-performance computing centers are citing the need for public cloud is for surge capacity, which again is another example of the demand that we're having in high-performance computing. No longer are you able to fulfill all the needs with the resources you have on-prem. So I think it's a good thing, and how it evolves, and we'll all be working together to figure out what are the right things to move to the cloud, the security restrictions or needs that you have, et cetera. So the cloud is definitely a growth, and when I talked about the definition, when we talk about the definition of high-performance computing workloads, I believe that why the CSPs are so interested is the amazing growth in machine learning and AI. And this is all about, the convergence or the need. I mean, they will say that it will double by 2019. Okay, that's what surveys say about that. If you look into the future in 5 years, we expect AI and machine learning to be 80% of the workloads in the cloud. Okay? And you have to remember, in my world, that means HPC workloads, and this will be all growth workloads, will be 80% HPC workloads will be in the cloud. Okay, so this is the importance, the fundamental importance of what we're doing, because it's going to lead to the overall growth in compute and the needs of everybody in this room. So we say that AI is growing, obviously. AI is the buzzword. When I was in the national labs, we really talked about a three-pronged approach to scientific discovery. And in the earlier times, it was about empirical observations. But we talked about we used theory, experiments, and modeling and simulation. And that was what we used for scientific discovery. And we are now seeing this fourth paradigm. Our models and simulations that HPC has traditionally used is physics-based models, right? And this was based on theory. And then we used the theory, the basic physics, to develop a model, and we would simulate it. Then we would compare it to experiment. And then we'd keep moving forward, right? With the amount of data and the advancements in machine learning and AI, we now are able to do data-based models. And this is completely changing the game. And those database models, I'm going to keep coming back to this. If you walk away with one thing, is the importance of high-performance computing and that infrastructure. Those database models, machine learning, require the high-performance infrastructure that we develop. I'm going to give an example. And if you've heard me talk, you've probably heard this example because I think it's a really cool example. When I was at Lawrence Livermore National Labs, there was a facility called the National Ignition Facility. And the goal of that facility was to produce fusion energy in a lab. Ultimately, the ability to harness fusion energy could solve a lot of our energy problems for the future. So very, very worthy goal. And they're using lasers, 192 lasers, all focused on basically a capsule the width of your human hair to try to provide fusion energy. And they have been at this for years, decades, right, for this goal. And they have been using physics-based modeling. They are a huge proponent of modeling and simulation. And they were unable to get more energy out than they were putting in using physics-based models. They went ahead and they put together an algorithm because they have been, again, testing the National Ignition Facility for over 5 years. They went through and they did machine learning on which shapes of that capsule produced the best results and which waveforms of the laser light going into the capsule produced the best results. They had been using a sphere. It was a cryogenically cooled sphere of deuterium, and they found that actually the sphere was not the right shape, going through the different, using data models, even though physics would say that was the right shape. They've changed the shape, and they've improved their output by 3 times. They're not quite yet, we're not ready for a fusion energy plant, but these are the kinds of things that you talk about scientific discovery and what data models can do to change the way we approach problems. And I think that's huge, and I think this is going to be a huge shift in what we're going to see moving forward. Just like computers everywhere, AI is everywhere, right? And I've talked about using our intelligent devices, but you can say it's AI for good or AI for evil, right? We've talked about that. Every single one of us, when we go to Amazon.com, we get all these, these things would be good for you, right, kind of thing. But it's more than just commerce. It's really going to be about, again, this whole data models and all that. And I know there's going to be a session on AI, and I know that Intel's doing a workshop on Thursday. So if you're more interested in what we have in the AI area, please attend that workshop. But AI is everywhere. And it's driving this converged workload. So some of the examples that we can talk about today is here's some of the examples. Pharmaceutical companies, they are using this combination of modeling and simulation today with high-performance data analytics to look at the effectiveness of vaccines. And they've been able to improve the effectiveness of the vaccines by 50% and save 5 to 100 million, and this was one vaccine. So when you think about the number of vaccines that they could take advantage of this, I mean, it's huge, the impact. Predictive analytics, and I'm going to need Ian's help here from the UK. So there is a sports team, a football team in the UK, Leicester. Okay, Leicester. And they had the odds of winning were 1 in 5,000. Okay, they weren't going to win the UK championship for the club football. We worked with a company that outfitted them with predictive sensors. And they believe they won, they did win, because they had the lowest injury rate. So their athletes were able to play longer, they're especially star athletes. Their injury rate was, I think it was like 186 hours off compared to 700 to 900 hours off. So quite significantly less than the other teams competing, the top teams that were supposed to win. And they did this by wearing sensors, right? So using this kind of data, they were able to look at when you jumped and landed, what kind of strains you were putting on your body, and then be able to do preventative care instead of once it's injured and then trying to fix it. So they won. this past year, and I think that's just an example. I guess this is not allowed in the World Cup type program.
Probably help the spring balls.
Okay, there you go. I talked a little bit about virtual prototyping when we talked about economics of just modeling and simulation. But one of the things we're doing now is we're combining the modeling and simulation with actual 3D printing. So again, able to figure out the best fit for what you need, and then print it virtually, have a 3D representation so that you can actually see if it's going to work and the interfaces are going to work. And I'm going to go more into the precision medicine because I'm just a huge fan of how HPC can change the world in precision medicine. But first, let's talk about, so I started with our, what used to be the high-performance computing, and we talked, it's modeling and simulation. Everybody thought those were the traditional workloads for high-performance computing. You needed an HPC interconnect, and you had a dedicated cluster, and it was a standalone system. Today, we have multiple workloads that fall under high-performance computing. We may have standard Ethernet or HPC interconnects. But it's really disaggregated. You may have your Hadoop cluster, you may have your HPC center, and then in the data center, you're going to have Oracle and SAP or PeopleSoft, Workday, whatever, honestly doing high-performance data analytics, and they're all disaggregated separate. What we need is this converged platform. It's going to be based on high-performance infrastructure. It's going to have the converged workloads, and it's more having a workflow approach to these different workloads. It's going to have advanced interconnects, and it's going to have this hierarchy of compute, memory, and storage. There's going to be a lot more blurring between memory and storage, because that's what we're going to need, right? Because in HPDA, high performance data analytics, data, you need access to fast memory. So you've got to have a hierarchy. You've got the interconnects. I mean, I think cloud is based on Ethernet. A lot of the big sites are based on an HPC interconnect. Moving towards a high-performance Ethernet-based fabric, I really do believe is the future. Having a single system that can support all of this means a major advancement in the software layers. And having the abstraction layer so that we can run different workloads, I mean, a difference in resource managers, et cetera, in order to be able to run these different workloads on a converged platform. So the converged platform is also my terminology to say high-performance infrastructure. I mean, these things, I say high-performance computing infrastructure because that's where I'm from the HPC. But I think the world will call it a converged platform or something like that. Who knows what that terminology will ultimately be. But it's the infrastructure, a lot of what we have put in and have been using for the last 50 years. So why do we care? I don't know, how many of you attended the open area plenary for SC18 on societal impacts? Anybody? What'd you think, Deanna, Rick? Good?
Really good.
Yeah. So this is why I love HPC and why I'm so excited about the future of HPC. There was a panel put together that really talked about the true grand challenges that this world is facing. Our technology pace is just been huge, the technology and innovation. And it's going to affect everything. Yet we still have this disparity between the rich and the poor. And I have my notes, but I'm going to try to go by memory, and maybe Rich and Dan will help me back there if I don't get all the data correct. But it talks, they talked about 1 in 9 people, adults, earn less than $1.80 a day. They don't have access to clean water. They don't have basic health care. Talked about how infant mortality has been going down for 20 years, and it's going up for the first time in 20 years. Talked about how people are being displaced more than ever in our existence of the human race, and over 25 million of those displaced are under the age of 18. I mean, they don't know a home. They discussed that we're going to be a $10 billion population. We're going to have 10 billion people, and we don't know how we're going to do food and water. Scarcity, that's going to be a huge demand, and just healthcare. So it was amazing, and I can send you the link if you want to watch it. It was really moving and just really helpful about those fundamentals of what you need. And why HPC is so important for the future. I mean, we have to transform HPC so that we can be part of the answers to all those truly grand challenges. What are we doing today? So some of the examples again, Intel's working with a company to improve your radiology. So when you go in and get an X-ray, you want it in a good time and you want the right answer, right? So we're using HPDA along with the technology, and we've seen a 50% improvement in the accuracy of those diagnoses. Drug discovery, very similar. Medical imaging, very similar type results by using the combination of HPDA and high-performance computing. We're able to get better accuracy and speed up results. So I think that full top line, and I'll go into some even case examples later, but let's talk about oil rig safety. Able to use high-performance data analytics to look at the corrosion of it's not technology, but equipment that is down underwater, so we can see before it breaks versus reacting afterwards. Huge. Traffic safety. So I don't know, in Cape Town, if you have this lovely things where you have the red lights, and it's not just for, I was going to say, we're not just using HPDA to give you tickets, like I seem to get way too often. Do we have that here? Okay, so drive carefully here too. But it's really to look at traffic flow and also safety. What is the impact of changing, lights, and the flow of lights, and just using the data analytics to improve the traffic management. I think threat warning is one of the things that we have used, that HPC has been key for advanced warning of hurricanes, tornadoes, et cetera, and we continue to now use the data analytics as part of that. And then fraud detection, it's always irritating when you get the call from the bank saying that your credit card is no longer good and you're getting a new one. But it's amazing how fast they're able to detect fraud because of using high-performance data analytics. So these are just some of the examples of the things today that we're doing. And again, I stress, I think these grand challenges, these ultimate grand challenges, are what we need to be striving for so that we can truly make a difference to society. So some of the examples that Intel's partnered with a company for smarter clinical trials. And so I talked about the football team that used the sensors on their body to look at injury. I mean, this is somewhat similar. They are using activity monitors, so your Fitbit, but they're looking at the air pollution. They're looking at your weather. They're looking at this sleep quality. They're taking all of these disparate data feeds, combining them into a single platform. We have an analytics platform. I think it's called the Pharma Analytics Platform, to look at you as an individual. So instead of doing, and this is truly the start of precision medicine, right? So instead of just looking at a population, and a lot of the clinical studies we're doing large populations, this is down to the individual person so that they can better match your healthcare plan to actually what's happening to you personally. And the other thing that is key here is they can do this remotely. So no longer do you have to be close to a hospital to be able to get access to this specialized and personalized healthcare plan. I think that is cool, and we need to do more and more of that. And then chronic care management. So this is a huge expense for the healthcare industry. As it says, 86% of the annual healthcare expenditures in the US is for the chronic care. So just the management of existing problems. And really, if we could get people to manage them and do more preventative before they escalate and go to emergency room, it saves 50% of the cost. I mean, not only does it save money, but it also, I would assume, is a quality of life, right? Going to the hospital is not something most people want to do. So anyway, again, we're using biometric sensors, and we're using, it's a remote system where you can do it wherever, and monitoring devices, and we're able to see problems that are occurring before they require emergency care, saving costs and time. I think there's a big theme about preventative, keeping football team injuries down to keeping people out of the emergency room. It's better care with a lower cost is the bottom line. So I think those are some of the more precision medicine type approaches, but there's also a lot of work being done in the scientific discovery area. I talked about the National Ignition Facility, but let's also talk about statistical methods being used to catalog the visible universe. I think the square kilometer array is going to blow away the amount of data that we're going to get from the objects out in the universe. And we need to get better at using statistical methods to identify. It's much more than a human eye can do. The combination of deep learning with simulation for weather and climate change, and I will have to say happy. I looked at the weather forecast. It's not supposed to rain till Thursday here. And when I opened up the window this morning, I was not happy. But, so it needs to get better, because I did not pack an umbrella. But, I mean, this is key for us to look at the changes that are happening due to climate so that we have early warning, not only for things like weather issues, climate issues, but just also, I know that our airports are keenly concerned with weather forecasts. They need real-time, up-to-date, what's happening with weather patterns in order to make sure our planes arrive safely. So it's today, but it's also in the future. Then also we are using deep learning to look at deep matter and dark energy in the universe. And we've been able, with the deep learning techniques, taken something that has taken 60 days to run on a computer down to 9 minutes. So if we can, reduce how long it takes to find these scientific discoveries, imagine how much more we could do with that time. I think that's a big key that, again, the big takeaway is this fourth paradigm using data models along with physics models is going to change the way we approach computing. So the explosion of data is driving to AI and high-performance data analytics, and this convergence is driving to this new compute. And the compute is driving the high-performance infrastructure that we are very in the right person to drive and lead the future of compute. And I think maybe Happy would be good if we could come up with what is that name, that catchy name, you know, a converged platform, HPC infrastructure. You know, we need some really catchy name like AI so that we can claim it as ours and really drive it into the future. So that was the basis of the talk. I do have some fun announcements. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I have one more. I mean, I think that the key is that 30 years of SC, Intel celebrated its 50 years, 20 years of Intel Xeon processor, putting in the new technology we need for cloud, for AVX 512, for parallel programming, databases. You know, we will continue to push that envelope into our Xeon processors so that you can solve the problems that you need to solve. I mean, that's the underlying reason we're here. So I think as we drive towards exascale, as we drive towards democratization of HPC, it's important that we provide the core components for you to solve your problems. And Happy, you said how many years have you been doing this conference? 12th? Okay, so 12 times for HPC conference too. So again, we have a history here that we're going to build upon, and I think that it's up to us to make sure we push to the right future. So with that, I have the special announcement. Many of you, if you know me, I'm very involved in the women in HPC and a huge proponent, and I want to see that kilt on you, Happy. I think that would be great. And it started probably, I can't even think how many years ago. We're probably going on to about 5 years. I gave a talk at a Women in HPC workshop at the International Supercomputing Conference. And, you know, I talked about some of the things that happened to me in the past, and I was totally convinced that that stuff wasn't happening anymore. There was no discrimination in the scientific world. And at the break, a number of PhD students came up and talked to me about the problems they were still having. And it broke my heart. And I thought, bad for me. Here I am a leader at HPC, and I just made the assumption that everything was great. I knew we were challenged trying to recruit that workforce, but I really didn't think that there was still fundamental issues just for the underrepresented minorities in the community. And I think it really hit home because my daughter was entering college to become a computer engineer the following year. And there was no way, you know, this is where Mama Bear comes out, there was no way my daughter was ever going to face some of the stuff that I faced. So I'm really excited to not only support just the student cluster competition, which is huge. That's it was kicked off in 2007 at SE 07, and looking at Rich back there, by Brent Gorda was the leader of it, who kicked off the Student Cluster Challenge and is just growing in popularity, which I think is so cool. But also, Intel would like to recognize the best prize for the best female and the Student Cluster Challenge to encourage them to continue to work towards high-performance computing. And so with that, we are announcing a monetary award for the best female, and I'm really excited about that. Thank you.